Hi, so today on Franklin's Group Sewing Tips, we're going to give you our top tips for sewing stretch fabrics. So the first thing is you need to understand your grain line. So along the left here I've got the selvage for this piece of jersey fabric, and as you can see you have vertical grain lines that run down. They run parallel, as you can see when you stretch it you can see them more easily. They run parallel to the selvage, and your direction of greatest stretch is normally, not always, but normally contrary to the grain line. So it will go across the piece of fabric like this. So that would go around the body. You want your direction of greatest stretch running horizontally around the body, and then vertically would be your drape or your hang of the fabric. So in terms of cutting, my top tip is really, if you can, avoid scissors. So as soon as you put your scissors in underneath the fabric, you can see it lifts the fabric, and sometimes it can distort a stretch fabric as you start to lift it, particularly lighter weight stretch fabrics like a viscose or something like that. The best thing really to use is a rotary cutter. You'll need a cutting board to go with it, but as you can see, you can cut straight through the fabric without distorting it in any way. It means you get a really nice clean cut if you use a rotary cutter. So my top tips for needles and thread. So I like a super stretch needle. This is the black super stretch. They're really good for anything that's got a really high lycra, elastane, spandex content in it. They have an enlarged scarf at the back of the needle just above the eye, which means there's more space for the bobbin hook to actually catch the top thread when you're sewing. So you're going to get far reduced skip stitches, if any at all, if you use the super stretch needles. The best thread is this Mariflex thread by Gutermann. So you obviously need to use a stretch stitch, but also you can see this thread is a little bit stretchy as well. So if you combine that with a stretch stitch, you're going to get again far reduced chance of any stitches popping. So super stretch needles and Mariflex thread. In terms of the kind of stitch that you want to use, there are three main stitches that I'm going to use if I'm sewing on my sewing machine stretch fabric. So the first one is this one here, number 2. It's your lightning stitch. Most modern machines will have this, and it's the best kind of stitch for constructing. So any kind of interior seams, side seams, that kind of thing. You can see it's really stretchy, but it's also not very wide. It's quite a narrow stitch, so you can still press seams open, things like that. For top stitching, I really like to use a triple straight stitch. Again, it's a stretchy stitch, but it looks like a straight stitch. And then finally, this stitch here, number 5, is a triple zigzag stitch, and I really like this for hemming, especially lycra, swimwear, like lingerie, that kind of thing. They're both all three of them are stretchy stitches. The lightning stitch for constructing seams, and the triple straight stitch and the triple zigzag stitch for top stitching around necklines, around hems, anything like that. Those are my go-tos if I'm using my sewing machine. If you're lucky enough to have an overlocker to sew your stretchy fabrics on, then there are a couple of changes I'll make to my overlocker if I'm going to sew a stretch fabric. So the first thing is my stitch length here. I'm going to reduce that just a little bit. So normally it's on about 2.5. I'm going to take it down to between 2 and 2.5. It just shortens your stitch length a little bit and gives it a little bit more stretch. Then now I'm going to have a look at my differential feed. So normally that's on neutral. I'm going to take that up towards about 1.5. Really depends on how stretchy your fabric is as to how much you want to increase the differential feed by. Super stretchy fabrics, you might want to just go over 1.5. Fabrics with a bit less stretch, somewhere between neutral and 1.5, but it stops you getting that lettucing look that you get when your fabric comes out the back of the overlocker. It'll keep it nice and flat. My next tip is to use a glue pen. So when you're sewing with stretchy fabrics, particularly lycra like this black lycra that I've got here, it's really slippery and slidey and it moves around all the time. If you have a glue marker like this, then you can pop it down and you can just stick your pieces of fabric together. So when they go through either the sewing machine or the overlocker, it's going to stop those two pieces of fabric from moving away from one another when you're sewing. Particularly if you're using the differential feed, you can find the bottom layer is fed faster than the top layer. This really stops that from happening. So you can see here as I finish up my seam, I'm just going to line things up and then sew to the end, and I've glued the two end pieces together, so it's going to stop them from, like I say, coming apart. So as I come down to the end here, I'm going to hold them together, keep the clip on to the last sec, and then just whip the clip off all the way down to the end. And then you can see that it's kept those two layers of fabric completely in line. And talking of clips, that's my next top tip. So when you're sewing on your overlocker, really you want to use sewing clips rather than pins. So they come in all sorts of different sizes. and you literally just use them to clip the 2 layers of fabric together. So sometimes if you're using pins to stick your fabric together when you're sewing, it can cause little holes, and those holes can then rip into the fibres of the fabric and it will cause your seams to shred, which is no one's idea of a good time. So if you use clips to hold your fabric together, you're going to stop that from happening. The other thing is you literally can't go over a clip on your overlocker. It's too big to go underneath the foot. If you go over a pin on your overlocker, you can cause real damage. You can throw out the timing on your machine, you can break your needle, you can damage your blade. So really you don't want to have pins anywhere near your overlocker. You want to use clips if at all possible. And there we go. Those are all my top tips. And this is what I finished making for my daughter, a little sports bra. So you don't need to be scared of sewing stretch fabrics. A few little tips will keep you happy all the time. There we go. Bye.